Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparutade sangamata satawara ye sodavanta bamunjanto satang. So this afternoon, a chance to contemplate, reflect on the way it is, the Dhamma. That's where the Dhamma is the way it is. The ultimate reality is here and now. It's not just some abstract concept. So when we talk about Dhamma, we say Santidiko Dhamma, apparent here and now. It's here and now. But ultimate reality or Dhamma are words created by human beings about what is wordless, and you can't conceive it or objectify it in any way, because you are Dhamma. You are apparent here and now. Conscious awareness here and now is a matter of fact. It's a fact. It's not just an assumption or a theory. But we take our consciousness is something very personal. We see consciousness as the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. We see the consciousness as something that comes and goes according to conditions. But when you reflect on your life, you've been conscious since the day you were born. And so consciousness, it doesn't kind of change according to conditions. The conditions change within consciousness. So consciousness is not personal. It's Dhamma, it's apparent here and now. It's timeless, it's not born or dies. So human beings, we're thinking creatures. We've developed languages, and we can create abstractions and all kinds of theories, metaphysical theories. We can be scientific, psychological, mythical, metaphysical. And that's all created through thinking, through the ability to think. And then people ask, what about dogs and cats and turtles and amoebas? They don't seem to think. And then, but are they conscious? And sometimes it's shocking to see educated people saying, well, dogs aren't conscious because they don't think. Thinking arises in consciousness. Thinking is something we create. It's not given to us. When you're born, you don't start thinking. And of course, more educated you are, then you tend to think a lot, have a lot of views and opinions, and you attach to those views and opinions. And so people have strong views about politics, or about race, or about religion, about human rights. Some of it's very good thinking, very humanitarian, generous. Some of it's very narrow-minded, biased, prejudiced, but it's still thinking. Because it's not Dhamma, it's not the Dhamma, Santitiko Dhamma, it's just an individual forming views and opinions with his thought process according to his or her conditioning. So the more you think, the more you doubt. And doubting is the third fetter in the 10 fetters program. Call it Wicikicca, or doubt. So the first 3 fetters that prevent us from realizing stream entry, or the Sotapanna stream entry state, is we're thinking, we're attaching to the idea of stream entry. On a personal level, we think, I want to become a stream enterer. Learning to make a decision about life, should I ordain or not, takes thinking. Some days you feel you want to ordain, and other days you think, no, I don't want to. The thinking can change according to the weather or the mood you happen to have during when you wake up. So attachment to thinking creates doubt. And the reality of doubt is not knowing what to do. And then as a person, as a personality, as a separate ego, a separate personality, then we want to know what to do. We don't like that state of not knowing. Tell me what, sometimes we'll ask somebody else, should I or shouldn't I? We would go to authorities or friends, gurus or monks, and ask, should I or shouldn't I? Because then somebody will tell us you should or you shouldn't. And then you might grasp that. Somebody says you should ordain, and then you grasp that view because some wise monk told you you should. Or maybe the monk says you shouldn't, and you grasp that. So then what you consider a view from a wise person says you shouldn't ordain. So should or shouldn't, right or wrong, left or right, good or bad, male or female, these are all phenomenal conditions. They're not the Dhamma, they're not apparent here and now. Even to grasp the view of sexual difference is not apparent here and now unless you're obsessed with it. You're thinking about it. And yet we can fight and quarrel and wage wars and hold strong views and resentment, seeking revenge because of how we grasp phenomena, conditions. And we don't know what we're doing. We're just habituated to these kind of habits. It's karmic. You can use the word karma. It's our karma to have a view of the right or the left, or good or bad. And then because of the grasping, then somebody else grasps the opposite, so then that's conflict. So the human realm, the Buddha pointed to this realm of conflict. The First Noble Truth of suffering, it's a conflicting realm because of this ignorance. This avijja is the cause of everything, it's the cause of suffering. Not knowing Dhamma, the Dhamma, apparent here and now, not realizing your true nature, you grasp something that's not what's really your true nature, that you acquired after birth, that you're clinging to out of ignorance of the Dhamma. So awakening, or Bhutto, or Buddha, means awakening to Dhamma, to reality itself, which is apparent here and now. So doubt, being a thinker myself, my personal character tends to be one that thinks a lot and doubts a lot. So, then the third fetter is vicikicca, or doubt. Should I conquer doubt? How do you conquer doubt as a person, as an individual person? You can just be a blind believer, demand to know the truth from what somebody tells you, and just support that the rest of your life till you drop dead. But that's just another blind way of living, not realizing your true nature. And doubt then is something you attach to some kind of a faith or belief system that you blindly hold to, because then you don't have to doubt or investigate or reflect on anything. So in the Vipassana meditation teachings, the Four Foundations of Mindfulness is about investigating. It's an encouragement, an invitation to investigate experience here and now. And that's what's so profound about it, because it's not about a belief in Four Noble Truths or in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Not like you have to believe in anatta, there's no self, or believe in the law of karma, cause and effect, or believe in Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, or any other form of religion. But the Four Noble Truths is not about belief, but investigating. So this is what Vipassana is, looking into the way things are, direct experience apparent here and now. Doubt is about holding on to views and opinions, not knowing, but not investigating not knowing, trying to get rid of doubt. Trying to become one who believes or operates according to what other people tell you to is right. So you have so many in a world that is so populated now with human beings that believe what they're told and don't investigate their own experience. So there's religious wars, there's Catholics and Protestants, In the Buddhist world, there can be a lot of views about Mahayana and Theravada. We can believe in Theravada is the best, or Mahayana or Tibetan Buddhism, according to grasping the scriptural teachings or what we've been told by teachers or monastics. But that very grasping is something that the Buddha encouraged us to investigate. If we're obsessed with some view and opinion about right and wrong, good or bad, then that obsession haunts us, creates endless problems. And we form biases, prejudices according to what we're grasping, because the world that we live in is a conflictive one. It's not about there's a right side and a wrong side as absolutes. Right and wrong are phenomenal, they're conditions, how we label phenomena, good and bad, male and female. So is Dhamma, the Dhamma that we take refuge in, is it male or female? Can you apply good or bad, right or wrong to it? Well, we tend to say it's absolutely right or absolutely good, because we believe that Dhamma is what we take refuge in as Theravada Buddhists in this tradition. So it must be good. And we take that for granted, but actually, good and bad are creations of the mind. They're not the Dhamma, the apparent here and now. So we tend to live in a world of views and opinions and be grasping these views and opinions blindly, until we awaken to the way it is. And this doubt, this vicikiccha, this third fetter, that stops us from seeing or knowing directly the path of liberation, knowing the Dhamma here and now, is the personality view. Sakkayaditthi is the cultural conditioning, silabhata paramasa, and vicikiccha, the thinking mind that grasps views and opinions that create doubt. So doubt then, what happens in the experience of doubting? When you don't know who you are, what to do, what's apparent here and now is not knowing, isn't it? What should I do? Should I ordain, or should I not? Or should I disrobe? Or should I stay? Or what should I do? Tell me what to do. And then apparent here and now is to be aware of not knowing. It's like this. If we're someone that always wants to know, then we're always attached to something, condition, a phenomenon, and we don't know we're doing it. We're just habituated to do that, culturally attuned to grasping our cultural identity, our personal identity, our religious identity, or non-religious. We can believe we're non-religious, we're atheists. But not knowing is when there's not knowing, when there's doubt, it's apparent here and now that you're aware of it. What is aware of not knowing? So you begin to open to emptiness, to silence, to the Dhamma, apparent here and now, not knowing. The Dhamma doesn't know what you should do. So, by not knowing is a way to realize the path, because not knowing is not, you see it as some kind of personal flaw maybe, but let go of that. Let go of everything and just not know anything. Don't feel you have to know anything at all or believe anything. The doubt can take us to that realization. If we use it wisely, with wisdom. So instead of trying to find out from somebody what you should do, or what is the wise course to take, or are you really a stream enterer? You know, you've been practicing meditation for many years, you've been ordained many years, people say you should have attained stream entry by now. And so you ask a monk or a nun, you want to go and ask, am I a stream enterer? And of course, you know, that's, how can a single person, a Sakya Ditti Silabhata Bharamasa Vichikecha personality, a separate person, to become a stream enterer? How can you realize Dhamma, or ultimate reality, or absolute reality, if you're still operating from, am I a stream enterer? You know, you realize it's impossible. A personality, Sakya Ditti's condition, you're not what you think, or your personality, or your emotional habits. You're not that. That's not self. It's impermanent, changes according to conditions. The grasping of Sakya Ditti, the ego, the sense of a separate self, identity with a physical body, with a form, the cultural conditioning, even Buddhist conditioning. The Buddha isn't asking us to grasp Buddhism and become Buddhists. He's pointing to Dhamma, ultimate reality apparent here and now. So this is a very direct approach, you know, in the Four Noble Truths is a very direct teaching. It's not about developing samadhi or getting this and getting something as a person, but realizing that phenomena is unsatisfactory, that grasping any phenomenal object, whether it's emotional, mental, intellectual, physical, that kind of grasping can only lead to disappointment or suffering or grief, sorrow, despair, and anguish. So we live in a world, in a society that the majority of human beings don't know this, don't have any clue of what the conditions that they experience are. They want to improve them if they're poor and unsatisfactory, or they want to hold on to them desperately if they're well off and comfortable. But it's very kind of personal and dependent upon whether it's you're wealthy or poor, or you're living in a fair and just society or a tyrannical one. So we just had an election in Britain, and so now people are forming opinions and views about Labour and holding a lot of resentment towards Tories because of the conditions of the country and how they personally react to the economic experience living here in the UK. And these conditions, these grasping of Tory versus Labour leads to endless conflicts. Who's right and who's wrong? In France, they're having elections. In the United States, all about abusing each other, calling each other names, insulting each other according to the views that you hold. The experiences that you take very personally. So experience is sensual. We experience through the senses. Dhamma is not an experience. The realizing of Dhamma is not an experience. It's not sensual. But it's apparent here and now. Timeless. See for yourself, ehipassiko. Come and see, wake up right now and just recognize your true nature is the deathless ultimate reality rather than the mortal conditions that we've been told that we are. We're this form, this body. So in Dhamma, where it's not personal, it's anatta. There's no person, there's no God or kind of almighty force personified as Dhamma. So we can't make a godlike image of Dhamma. You can't paint a picture of a male or female person as the kind of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is a word for what is natural, what is uncreated, unborn, unoriginated, unformed, apparent here and now and timeless. Come and see for yourself. It's to be realized individually because it's not a belief anymore. It's not about me telling you what to believe, but to be realized for yourself individually. Pajjatang veti dapa vinuhi. So not knowing, the Dhamma doesn't know right or wrong, good or bad. It has no language, it's not Pali, it's not English, it's not Thai. There's all these different languages, Sanskrit, Pali, Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese. They're all created forms, they're all sankharas, they're phenomenal conditions. And they define the conditioned realm, what's good and bad, what's right and wrong. So in the Theravada tradition, we have the Dana Sila Bhavana sequence. Like dana is a very basis for happiness in the world, being generous, not being selfish. Sharing what you have with others is a kind of basic advice that we give in Buddhist countries, to be generous and not selfish. Because that's a kind of basis, a foundation for worldly happiness. It's not, and just find out for yourself, when you're selfish, what is it like to be really selfish? When you contemplate, you're feeling really selfish and miserly and mean, is like this. So sometimes we do feel that way. We feel ungenerous, ungrateful, very self-centered, is like this. And we say that, we can condemn ourselves for it. We said we might feel we shouldn't be selfish. And that's, according to the world, you shouldn't be. A good Buddhist is selfless, is generous. That's true. But a good Buddhist is still a perception. And a bad Buddhist, and good and bad are phenomenal words that describe phenomena according to personal views and opinions, cultural conditioning, religious conditioning. So dana, then sila, is in these 5 precepts, the 5 precepts. They're basic, not killing, not intentionally murdering somebody, not stealing, not telling lies, being responsible for sexual behavior, not just being a victim of sexual desires, refraining from substances that cause heedlessness, like alcohol or drugs, addictive drugs. So these are kind of basic advice towards living a life as an individual human being in society. So the 5 precepts is just common sense, really, and good form about action and speech, about behavior. If you're going to live, we have to live our lives in society, in family life, or in monastic life. As individual members of society. So dana, sila are highly regarded, encouraged to develop as an individual person. Then bhavana, or meditation, is realizing Dhamma. Your true nature is not personal, not separate. Apparent here and now. That's a very important reflection to use in this tradition, because we chant it in morning, evening puja. It's become part of a ceremonial chant. But it's much more than that. It's not just santidiko, akaliko, ehi, praskopanayiko, bhajatang. It's not, that's good. Those are good words, and not to disparage chanting them. But they take reflection too. They're much more profound than just Pali language or good ideas. So in my own practice, used out a lot as a reflection. It's like this, not knowing what to do. What's the answer to the question? In old age, you experience what they call senior moments. So I experience these senior moments quite often where I can't remember something. Something I remember ordinarily. And sometimes it's rather embarrassing because, there's so many rumors about dementia or Alzheimer's disease, and the loss of memory seems to be a threat if you're still personally attached to having a quick mind with a good memory. But also, it's also the path to see that not remembering, not knowing is like this. And there's always Dhamma here and now is the refuge, is what I take refuge in, not in my ability to remember everything that I've learned. And then in some forms of Zen Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, they deliberately using koans or conundrums that make no sense. They're not intellectually, they're not logical or reasonable. And of course, as a personality, we kind of worship logic and reason. When somebody's being emotional, you say, just be reasonable. Emotions aren't reasonable. So when people get emotional about an issue, then we advise them, just be reasonable. And that's we consider good advice. But emotions they're not reasonable experiences. They are experiences that we can witness to. When I feel anger or fear, or whatever the emotion might be, it's like this, rather than trying to be reasonable about it. So in bhavana or meditation, you're using the way you are, not what somebody tells you to be or should be, but whatever flaws, personal flaws, emotional habits, intellectual abilities, or whatever, we must use the way we are in these forms, because we're not the same. We don't think the same, we don't have the same emotional problems, we don't have the same identities, different conditioning, different generations, different genders, and on like that. These are all differences that when we identify, I'm right, the way I think is right, I'm a reasonable person, you should be like me. What am I doing? I'm promoting myself as a kind of model for how others should be. So being aware of that the ego is like this, that you should think like me, act like me, practice like me, is sakyaditi, is the ego. Because apparent here and now, we're using the experiences that we're having, not whether they're like mine, but the way you're experiencing monastic life is like this. Being senior nun, being senior monk is like this. And it's how should I be? Just trust yourself to be aware of the attachment to positions, or not knowing what to do in different situations. Taking on duties as senior members of the Sangha is like this. And then we have to, when you're a senior person in the Sangha, you're the focus of other people's views and opinions. Sitting here in this seat, I'm the focus of your attention. And what is that like? In the beginning years, it was very uncomfortable, because I didn't know what others were thinking. And then you get a lot of praise, a lot of criticism, love and hate, blame, praise and blame. When you're a figure that everybody has to listen to and officially respect and follow, it's like this. So there's no obstacles then to practice, to bhavana. Whether you might think, well, I'm just not spiritually mature, that's one excuse, or I have too many emotional problems, or I'm schizophrenic, or I'm bipolar, or I have all kinds of sexual problems, or with the way we identify with the conditions we're experiencing. But experience is through the form, through the senses, and Dhamma is not an experience. It's reality itself. And that's why taking refuge in Dhamma is like waking up, in which you're no longer seeing yourself with a critical mind, with all these different labels and views and opinions that you have or other people dump on you. You begin to have a sense of, I am this ultimate reality. Everyone is. Not me as a person. It's not personal. Dhamma is universal. It's the ground of being. It's here and now. And anyone, you can't claim it as some kind of personal quality or experience, because all of that goes, it fades and disappears through mindfulness and awareness of the way it is. All conditions are impermanent. All Dhamma, the Dhamma is not personal, not self. So it is a kind of magical teaching, wonderful teaching, because it's not about believing I'm the Dhamma, or the words like that we can, Luang Por Sumedho said, we're the Dhamma, so that I believe that. That's not what I'm suggesting. But bhavana is investigating. Vipassana is looking into the way things are. All conditions are impermanent. Try to find a condition that is permanent. Whatever, through experience, through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. Is there any permanent condition that you can find when you investigate? When you're aware of how your moods can change according to the weather, according to the time of day, according to whether people praise you or criticize you. Emotions are about feeling life. They're not reasonable. You can label, I have good emotions, I'm happy, I'm a very happy person, or I'm a depressed person. But whether you see yourself as a happy person or a depressed person, observe that this is an identity with words like happy and depressed. What is it that's aware of thought? Is thought aware of itself? Can thinking observe itself, or are you the observer of thinking? You know, thought is very limited. It has no feeling. But it can create feelings in us as separate sensory beings that we are in this physical form. That is not what we really are. It's what we've been told we are, and we believe we are, is this very fragile sensory body and mind, emotional habits, eyes, ears, nose, tongue. We identify with all of these things as, you know, good or bad, right or wrong, young or old, male or female. Are you really female or male? You know, it says that when you question it, the body is one or the other. But the body is a very fragile form, and it experiences pleasure, pain. Human bodies are about feeling, you know, pleasure and pain. Health and ill health. Youth and old age. Bodies are, we all have to share these experiences. We see, you know, what happens, and you know, as we grow old, we can try to stay young, but that's not wisdom. That's not wisdom. That's kind of foolish attempt to hang on to the past, or what you believe is, you don't want to be an old man or old woman, but this is part of experience that these forms have to go through from infancy to old age to death. And that's the way it is. All conditions are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. So in the few weeks, we'll enter the traditional pansa or rasa. Again, this is a tradition, and it is a time where, you know, meditation, bhavana is encouraged. So we have winter retreats where we give special attention during the cold season here in the UK to meditation, to bhavana. It's an opportunity to really challenge your worldly conditioning, not to judge it as good or bad, but to be aware it's the way it is. You don't choose to be the person you are. You didn't choose to be born as a man or woman. You didn't choose, the parents the family you were born into. You didn't choose to have the tendency, more personal tendencies, emotional tendencies, intellectual tendencies that you have or don't have. But whatever way you are, it's still the path. There's no obstruction to the path if you practice, investigate experience and see how impermanent experiences are and how relative they can be. And how unsatisfactory experience is. When I was a boy, I wanted to travel around the world, and I made it a kind of ambition for my life to be one who travels and visits all these other countries that you read about in school. And I've actually accomplished that in my life as a monk. and strangely enough, it's totally unimportant. And I've lived many years in Thailand, been to Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, China, Japan, Korea, India, Nepal, Tibet, all over Europe, United States, Mexico, Canada, Africa. And what are they now? They're just vague memories. Like coming back from Portugal, people ask me, how is Portugal? And it's fine. But no problems with Portugal, but it was an experience, but most of it I've forgotten already. How I experienced Portugal just a few weeks ago. Because how was India? Or I went Tudong in India for 5 months in 1973. How was that? And I have vivid memories of experiences there, but so what? It doesn't really matter. Because Dhamma is apparent here and now, timeless. Come and see for yourself. Like ehi passiko means, wake up, come and see for yourself. Don't just believe. Don't make this just an empty chant. Opanayiko, you go inward. You don't try to find Dhamma through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling in any way. Dhamma's not an experience. So the senses are about experience. We experience life through these senses, which can be pleasant, unpleasant, good or bad. But experience is about the changing conditions that we are not. Our true nature is Dhamma. So I want to offer this for your reflection for today.